Hello, viewers. Once again, another production by Lovebug in cooperation with the Kropenicky family, Joyce, who will be your reader today, the producer and director, and cameraman extraordinaire is Stan Kropenicky behind behind the camera, yeah. Anyway, this is a celebration of a beautiful fall Sunday and a nice semi-formal dinner outside courtesy of Grandma. Go to it, Grandma.
Hi, Anya.
Joyce.
So good to see you today. You know what? You're almost 2 years old, and I noticed that I haven't read you a single story in almost a month or three. So I found this book in the basement. It's called The Mammoth Fairy Tales and Bedtime Stories. And I think this was Grandma's book because look what Grandma did when she had it as a little girl. She actually colored the book because she enjoyed it so much.
She didn't stay in between the lines, though.
So Auntie Jamie had a great idea that we should have a formal dinner outside, or a formal dinner inside or outside. So that means Grandma got to do all this work and make pumpkin pie and apple pie, and we're going to have some squash and some roast pork, so that'll be fun. Anyway, today, Anya, I'm going to read you a story called Lazy Jack. Once upon a time, there was a boy named Jack, and he lived with his mother on the edge of town. They were very poor, and the old woman made her living by spinning. You know, in the olden days, they used to spin cloth and wool from sheep's fleece and things like that. So that's what spinning is. So she made her living by spinning. Not spinning on a bicycle like your mom might do today, but spinning to make cloth. But Jack was so lazy he would do nothing but lie in the sun in the hot weather and sit by the fire in the wintertime. His mother could not persuade him to do anything for her. At last she had to tell him that if he did not begin to work for his porridge, or what we call oatmeal now, or Cheerios, she would have to turn him out and to get his living as best he could. This threat did some good. And Jack went to help his neighboring farmer. He got a penny for his work. My goodness, a whole penny. And as he was coming home, never having had any money before, he lost the penny when he crossed a brook. A brook is like a little small river. "You stupid boy," said his mother. What a nasty thing for his mother to call him, said his mother when he reached home. "You should have put it in your pocket." "I'll do so another time," Jack replied. The next day, Jack went out again and hired himself to a dairy farmer. A dairy farmer is a farmer who would milk cows and have some chickens and different things like that. And so when he was finished working for the dairy farmer gave him a jar of milk for his day's work. I don't think it was pasteurized though. And Jack put the jar into his big pocket of his jacket. And all the milk was spilled long before he reached home. "Dear me," said his mother when she saw him, "you should have carried it on your head." "I'll do so another time," Jack replied. The following day, Jack hired himself again to the farmer, who agreed to give him cream cheese for his services. In the evening, Jack took the cheese and carried it home on his head. By the time he got there, the cheese was completely spoiled, part of it being lost and part of it matted with his hair.
Whoa.
"You stupid boy," said his mother again in a very sarcastic way. I hope nobody's mother ever says stupid to their children. "You should have carried it very carefully in your hand." "I'll do so another time," Jack replied. And the day after, Jack hired himself to a baker, who would give him nothing for his work but a large cat. Jack took the cat and carried it very carefully in his hands, but in a short time, Pussy scratched him. "I think this is your Nana's cat." So he was compelled to let her go. "You silly fellow," said his mother. You should have tied a string around it and led it along after you. Oh, I'll do that another time, said Jack. The next day, Jack hired himself to a butcher who paid him for his work with the shoulder of mutton. Do you know what mutton is, Anya? Mutton is a lamb, a little lamb. Except mutton is actually a very old lamb. So Jack took the mutton and tied a string to it, and trailed it behind after him in the dust, so that by the time he got home, guess what? The meat was spoiled. This time his mother was quite out of patience with him. The next day was Sunday, and she would have nothing for dinner but a few leaves of cabbage. You simpleton, she said, which is another thing that mothers should never call their sons.
Is it? Never mind, go.
You should have carried it on your shoulder. Oh my, I'll do that another time, Jack replied. On Monday, Jack went once more and hired himself to a cattle keeper, who gave him a donkey for his trouble. Though Jack was very strong, he had some trouble hoisting the donkey on his shoulders, but at last he succeeded and began walking home with his prize. Now it happened that along this road there lived a rich man with his only daughter. She was a beautiful girl, but unfortunately she was deaf and dumb. Deaf and dumb means she can't see and she can't talk. She can't hear and she can't talk. She may never had laughed in her life, and the doctors had said that she would never become like other children until somebody had made her laugh. Many had tried without success, and at last, in despair, her father had offered her in marriage to the first man who could make her laugh. This young lady was looking out the window when Jack passed by with the donkey on his shoulders, and his legs were sticking up in the air, and the sight was so comical that the girl burst into laughter at once and found that she could both speak and hear. Her father was overjoyed and kept his promise by marrying her to Jack. Thus Jack became a rich gentleman. They lived in a large house, and Jack's mother lived with them in great happiness for the rest of her days. And aren't you happy that Jack finally found happiness in his life? Talk to you later, Miss Anya. Have a happy fall.
This story, just read to you by Grandma Joyce, seems to be a prelude to War and Peace, judging by its lack of brevity. Once again, thank you for visiting with Lovebug Productions.